Welcome into the Rose Hill Studios for an MLB Trade Deadline special, courtesy of WFUV Sports. We are live on YouTube until about 6:30. An exciting time in Major League Baseball. The trade deadline is just under 90 minutes away, so we'll have a lot of fun getting into that. I'm Brian Rabacs. I'm joined by Jack Warner and Colin Loughran. And guys, I look forward to the trade deadline every single year and all the big moves that shake up, who sells, who makes the big moves that gets them to take that next step in their season. So I'm really excited, and I'm excited to get into it. Are we ready for this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very weird mixture of emotions because it's very exciting to have your phone off the hook all day with, all the different updates, waiting to hear who's going where. But at the same time, when you get into those final few hours before the deadline, it almost kind of feels like you're in almost like a baseball purgatory where you're just like waiting to be like, all right, what's going to happen? Is he staying? Is he going? So it's a very exciting time. We've already have some very high profile moves to discuss, and hopefully we have some more news break while we are sitting in this here studio.
This is absolutely the week in terms of what you look forward to during a baseball season. You look forward to the All-Star break. You look forward to the World Series, things of that sort, of course. But if we're talking about things that don't happen on the field, this is the week. So many times, even in this market alone, where the trade deadline has made a huge difference. 2015, the Mets go out and they get Yoenis Cespedes.
That is the example.
2021, Yankees get Rizzo Gallo. Didn't work out quite as well for the Yankees that year as it did. It did make a difference. Anything can happen in this sport, and it all can change in an instant. The trade deadline could be the start of something really special for any of these teams.
So, right now we're at August 1st, and the deadline's at 6 p.m., so we're under 90 minutes away. And in years past, I'm sure we've all been glued to our phones looking to see if we get that notification when the big name gets traded. How many guys do you have for notifications on Twitter? I got Passan, I got Ken Rosenthal, I got Heyman, I got probably those three, and probably somebody that I'm missing. I got a couple of guys.
For me, I only have Passan and Rosenthal.
Wow.
That's it. And then because the other thing is I have the MLB app and the ESPN app simultaneously. And usually, obviously, Passan is always first. He usually gets to news first. I always call him, for people who don't, when I explain about Passan to people who don't know, I always call him like the Woj of baseball. So he's very quick, but usually the ESPN app and the MLB app follow quite quickly. So I'm in like a 4 notification rotation of Passan, Rosenthal, MLB, and ESPN.
There's guys you got to have, of course. Passan, Rosenthal, Tim Kirchin. I'll add to that list.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
For me, though, I got to go with some of the local guys. I got Heyman and Sherman on my post notifications. I have to know what they're thinking. They've been in the business forever and ever and ever. Definitely aficionados when it comes to the Yankees and the Mets.
And another guy, if you're on topic of local people that help in breaking news for the trade deadline, Jack Curry, Fordham alum.
Absolutely,
for the Yes Network. He doesn't tweet that often, but when he tweets about the trade deadline, he always usually has the inside scoop and has information before other people do. So I love seeing what he brings to the table. And we'll see if we have any notifications break from Jack Curry later. The Yankees haven't been active a lot at the deadline up until this point.
I'm waiting for something.
We all are. It's a weird time for the Yankees. We don't know if they're going to buy. They might sell off some pieces. We're not really sure, but that's all for later. But let's start with the big name, right? Just before we went on, Justin Verlander, the biggest name on the market, got traded. He is going back to the Houston Astros. The Mets, in return, get prospects Drew Gilbert and Ryan Clifford, both outfielders, but the Mets fire sale, it continues. Verlander was the biggest name left today, but now he is gone. And if you look at the Mets and the way they've approached the offseason in the past, and this past offseason in particular, you had thought of the two-headed monster at the top of your rotation in Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander. And Colin, if you fast-forwarded to August 1st, I don't think anyone expected both of them not being New York Mets at the trade deadline.
Not even the most pessimistic Mets fan thought that this would be the result of 2023. And you look at what Verlander's done over his last 7, it makes this trade somewhat more upsetting for Mets fans. 4-1, 1.49 ERA over those last 7 games. It just speaks to this larger idea of how fluky baseball can be. The Mets last year, you win more than 100 games. You get knocked out in the wild card round by the Padres. You're thinking, okay, we can reload, come back this next year. You do lose DeGrom, but some people were saying it was an upgrade to put Verlander with Scherzer. I might have actually been in that camp at the time because I didn't know how durable DeGrom was going to be this year. I was proven right there, and at least Scherzer and Verlander for the better part of the season, made starts. Verlander, of course, missed the start of the campaign, but when he was out there every fifth day, he would go. So now that he's having some success, it makes it a little bit more upsetting if you're a Mets fan. In terms of returns, you could talk about it for days, but the whole idea was that this Mets team was supposed to compete for a title this year. Same story last year. I'll even argue 2021 could have been their year had they made some moves around this time of year.
No pro sports team will ever throw up a white flag verbally and just be like, look, like tell their face a fan base and say, listen, we're giving up this year. Like that's never something that will happen. But, you know, I was out in Boston doing Mets coverage for the Red Sox series, and that was coming just up close to this trade period that we're in now. And when it was talking about, you know, going forward, what moves will the Mets need to make at this deadline, there was two different ways of looking at it, because there was the angle of, do they still see the wild card as a possibility? And the, I guess, metaphorical white flag of frantically selling, having a fire sale, hosting.
They seem to have been doing that. Now, before I let you finish your point, we do have a call online. I mean, we're talking Mets, so let's bring in Dan Bartels is on the line. Dan, I mean, how are you doing seeing all these stars that the Mets had? They're kind of just all going out the door right now. How are you holding up?
Brian, Colin, Jack, safe to say I am shocked, to say the least, especially dealing Verlander, right? Because Scherzer, we all had that feeling that there was, you know, something going on, and he was on his way out. And I'm kind of happy in the return they got in being an Acuna, but who knows what he's going to turn out to be, especially in the two prospects they got for Verlander. That's the thing about prospects. You don't know what they're going to be, right? So it's a big question mark, and it really kind of throws a wrench into 2024 now as well, because I was a big advocate saying we should build around Verlander. He's the ace, especially, you know, we've seen his stock rise. That first game I ever did the Mets beat report on, it was that Giants game. He went, I think, 7 innings. Yeah, 7 innings and truly dominated, and that was kind of the beginning of the end, I guess, for him. So it's really tough right now, but from a Mets perspective, I mean, they're not afraid to eat these contracts. We saw what they did with Canna, and we saw what they did with Verlander. But I think on the same front, it's going to be really tough because they have all this money to spend, and it's a good luxury to have. But by the same token, these prospects have to play out. I think they will long term. Don't quote me on that, but I really do think this Mets team has some better pieces moving forward than what they had 2 days ago.
Now, Dan, the thing is that I'm confused about what you're saying is you think that the Mets can build around Justin Verlander. Now, I know it's upsetting to see him go, but at the same time, this is a 40-year-old pitcher who we don't know how much longer he has. And are you saying that they should have built around him next year and see what they had with him? I mean, he's 40 years old, though. How much more do you have with him?
I think you could get one more solid year out of him, Brian. I don't think even two. I mean, it's Justin Verlander, right? He's aging like fine wine. I think it's different from DeGrom, where he always had that injury history. Yeah, Verlander started the year a month late. There was a lot of talk of what we were going to get out of him. But I think you could have built around, I mean, hindsight's 2020, but you really could have built around Verlander next year. And who knows what they could have brought in. Senga would have been a really good option. I mean, Ohtani's obviously on everyone's mind. But long term, I think, yeah, building around Verlander is not the smartest play. But I think for next year, in terms of competing, and where the Mets are and where they've positioned themselves, especially from, you know, financially, I think Verlander was the ace, the top dog they could have, you know, made a serious run with. But who knows who that piece is going to be now.
Now, Dan, you see basically the two top pitchers in a rotation, or two of the biggest names really of our entire generation, really, two generational talent pitchers traded, along with a key piece of the bullpen in D-Rob, who was recently traded.
Yeah.
So what I have to ask you is, with so many different trades occurring to, I would argue, pretty impactful pieces of the pitching staff as a whole, what's next for this Mets pitching staff?
I mean, it's tough. You're going to have to go out there and, you know, Blake Snell's on the market. Urias from the Dodgers is on the market. Obviously, as I mentioned, Ohtani, that's the prize piece. But you're really going to have to build up this rotation again. Peterson, you have Peterson coming out of the pen. McGill, I think he's the one who they slotted in place to take Verlander's spot. Someone, Colin, as you know, I've been very high on McGill throughout all of his struggles. But, you know, it's going to be tough. They're going to have to go out there this offseason, and if the price isn't right, 2025 is going to be the year. And I hate to be that guy that looks so far into the future, but, that's kind of the position they put themselves in. They went all in on these two guys, as you said, who were the greatest pitchers we've ever seen. And the return really wasn't there. So moving forward, to answer your question, they're going to have to figure out pitching. It's an obvious yes, but I can't sit here and say who they're going to go after. But Blake Snell is a guy who you should keep your eye on, and maybe Urias. Aaron Nola as well is an option.
Well, Dan, we thank you for the call and all the insight.
Thank you, guys.
But, with the Mets, it's got to be really disheartening for Mets fans to see all these pieces get sold off, especially with the expectations you had. But Steve Cohen said it in his press conference a couple weeks ago that if the Mets were in this position at the trade deadline, buying was going to be just silly. He wasn't going to recklessly spend and just try to do what he could to get the Mets into the wild card. So the front office, they chose to sell, and they want to bolster up that farm system, and they got a lot of good prospect in return while still having enough talent at the major league level to be competitive. So I think the Mets, when you look at this trade deadline, they're approaching it about as well as they can right now.
Guys, the Mets are 50-55, 6 games back. Not too far behind a team like San Diego that is buying to put themselves in the postseason picture. So it just goes to show you how finite baseball is and how little things add up over the course of a season. I think this Mets team was different ever since that series in June against the Braves on the road, demoralizing losses. Now you're looking at a situation where you can't even sell the fans on next year being any better. It might be a step in the right direction because you'll see young talent come up and perform well. Hell, you saw that this year with Francisco Alvarez. He's been phenomenal. But it's not like you're going to be the class of the NL East next year either. I'd even argue Philly might be in a better position than you next year again. Atlanta is very clearly a step ahead of where the Mets are. And to everyone now saying, oh, we should have known better than to go out and get Verlander and Scherzer. Oh, relax. Everyone was all over that when they got him. They thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. And you know what? Rightfully so. They were two guys that had track records of great success, great postseason success. And you know what? They're probably headed to the Hall of Fame, too. This year, Scherzer's been more disappointing than Verlander this season, as far as I'm concerned. 9-4, 4.72 FIP. That's a career high for him. ERA right now sits at 4.01. But it's not just the pitching. This Mets team had so many issues over the course of the season. Last year, they had this death by a million paper cuts approach to scoring. And it worked because you had Alonso hitting fourth. You had guys like a Marte hitting fifth or Canna every once in a while in that 5 or 6 out that could drive in some runs. This year, they just haven't been that same team. McNeil and Alonso haven't hit. McNeil last year, a batting title champion. Nothing even close to that this year. Not even close.
Nothing.
So when you look at this team, it's not just one thing. There's several areas of concern. You're below league average in terms of batting average, on-base percentage, slugging percentage, and OPS. It's not just the pitching. It wasn't as if you were going to slot Verlander and Scherzer for someone else and all of the woes of this team would be fixed. They have a lot of work to do, and now the beautiful thing about it, I want to get your guys' take on this, they're still throwing money at the problem. They're just doing it indirectly by bolstering the farm and telling teams like the Houston Astros, you know what? No, we'll pay down Verlander's contract. We've got the money to do it.
Well, before we get to my thoughts on that question, we have another caller. Maddie Monti is on the line. Maddie, how are you doing? What you got for us? Tough time in Mets land. How are you doing?
Guys, can you hear me first of all?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, my God, great. I have been drinking a cold brew for the past hour. I am amped up about this trade deadline, and I'm going to be honest. I thought I was going to be severely underwhelmed today, but I should be asking you, Brian, as a Yankees fan, like, how are you feeling? Because my team is doing things right now.
Listen, it's a slow-moving train in the Bronx right now with the Yankees.
The train's moving?
It might not be, but listen, you don't know. Brian Cashman, he usually works in silence. He's very meticulous, but I mean the Yankees are in a really weird spot where they might buy, they might not. They don't know who they can buy. It's not a big market, so it is crazy. And I'm sure you saw this stat. The Yankees, out of the 30 teams, they're the only team that has not made a trade at the trade deadline. So, I mean, the worst thing they can do is do nothing, Maddie.
That's true, and like, talking about the Mets, they are selling like crazy. And I just had to talk about it for a second because I know everyone wants to be negative. They don't want to be optimistic right now. But I would like to be optimistic for a change. I'm going to turn things around. I will not be a Frank the Tank today. I want to say that I think, especially with the Verlander and Scherzer thing going on right now, I am not surprised, especially when Scherzer was told about the whole rebuild situation, because Billy Epler doesn't want to call it a rebuild. It's a full rebuild. I've never seen a bigger rebuild recently in my life than what's going on right now. The prospects they just got for Verlander, very impressive. I'm very happy with the 1 and the 4. I went to high school with the 4 prospects,
Wow.
which is crazy.
Fun fact.
I know. It's crazy how full circle this comes, but I was very excited to see that. But I think as a whole, looking at this team, I listened to the show so far, and I think this team was just kind of headed nowhere with what they have been doing this year. I think looking at it in hindsight, buying these old pitchers as good as we thought they were going to be was a huge mistake. And I think the only way to fix this is to massively rebuild like this team with what we're doing. And if that means we have to delay this, what we called 5-year World Series plan, I'm okay with that. But I did have one question for you guys to kind of ponder over, because I was watching a couple of shows today. There has been talk about what to do with hitting and, some of the players on the team that are considered maybe not movable. And one of those players could be considered to be Pete Alonso. I want to know if you guys think that Pete Alonso is potentially movable with the contract negotiations kind of not going anywhere, what the deal is with him, and do you think the Mets should get rid of him, should keep him? I want to know what you guys think, honestly.
You can't move Pete Alonso. I mean, that's the franchise guy right now. I'm sure the contract negotiations are going to work out at some point, but Pete Alonso, too valuable to the team. Maddie, thank you for the call. But when you look at the Mets rebuild, I mean, it's obviously they're going through the rebuild stretch right now. And we've spent a lot of time on Verlander. Guys, it's not just Verlander. Max Scherzer got dealt to the Rangers. You had Robertson get the dominoes falling. He was traded to the Marlins. And on the topic of the Marlins, they just made another move. Jake Berger traded from the Chicago White Sox to the Marlins, so they get a high impact back. But with Robertson, they get a closer. And then yesterday, they traded Mark Canha to the Brewers. So they're just tearing it all down right now. But the big thing here is with some of these trades, they get a lot of prospects to bolster this farm system, which is exactly what Steve Cohen and Billy Epler were looking to do at the deadline.
Well, here was one piece that I found interesting with the Mets, because the conversation up until this point was in terms of their tradable pieces with bats. The talk was Canha, so people ended up being right on that one. Canha gets traded. Tommy Pham was the other one who was talked about a lot. Now, Tommy Pham has had a fantastic year this year for the New York Mets offense, has been honestly one of the few high points, I think, in a pretty inconsistent batting order that they continue to put out there. And especially, I would say his season is even more of a success as he was brought in as more of a rental player. He wasn't somebody that you're investing in long term. I mean, he was brought in because he was available to do a job. Now, I was up until this point kind of taking the side of, because of his success this year, I understand that he could generate value, but kind of what I was talking about earlier, that their actions in this trade deadline, I think, tell the tale of how they view the rest of this season. Because if they go on a sell frenzy, especially with some of the bigger named, higher profile players that they've sold to this date, it may appear as more of a white flag. They're pretty much admitting defeat. But if Canha's been dealt, what do you think that means for Tommy Pham?
I think with the way that it's going right now, how does Tommy Pham not get traded? I think with just the way that the Mets are operating, and you said he's more of a rental piece. He's not sticking around after this year. So what value does he have past this 2023 season? And the Mets, they're aiming for 2025. At least that's what we've heard. New report came out that Max Scherzer, in his meeting with Billy Epler, he was told that the Mets, they're planning for 2025 at the earliest for their next competitive window. So that kind of tells you all you need to know. Scherzer said he was going to talk to the front office about the direction of the team and where it's going. And I guess the result of that meeting is him being a Texas Ranger.
We had called in from Cooperstown about what the Mets were going to do today, and I had said then I was all for trading David Robertson, but you'd have to wait until the deadline itself to do it. I think they traded him way too early.
They did it early.
I was on the side of I'd prefer they didn't trade him because you still need a closer if you're going to try and make a run at it this year. 6 games back is a lot for this time of season. It can be done, though. Now that they are in this rebuild, which I'll get to that in a second, it makes sense that they did trade him. I would have preferred they waited to see what type of deal they could have got from another club. As for Tommy Pham, he's been one of their most consistent hitters. He's a StatCast darling. 84th percentile in terms of barrel percentage, 94th percentile in terms of chase rate.
Those are two lot of reds on that StatCast thing.
Those are two stats that teams are going to want, especially come postseason time when it gets cold and the ball ain't flying out of the park the same as during the summer. You want guys that can find ways to get on base. Mark Canha in that similar vein, 6 home runs this year, 29 RBIs, 63 hits. Nowhere near where he was last season for them, but still a productive piece. If you're the Mets, these were the kind of guys that you had to move on from if you were trying to go into some type of rebuild. Scherzer and Verlander, different cases in my mind because those were culture pieces. The night that Scherzer was traded, I was actually at Citi Field covering the game. We got a chance to talk to Pete Alonso afterwards. He was upset, like visibly upset. Like, no, he wasn't crying in his hat, nothing like that, but he looked around as if to say, like, I don't know what's going on here anymore. I can only imagine the ripple effect that that's ultimately going to have on this organization because we're looking at this through the eyes of a new regime, right? It's Steve Cohen. It's Billy Epler. The Wilpons are not there. Sandy Alderson is not running the show anymore. As far as these Mets know, the owner does the right thing. The GM is trying to do the right thing. You can't necessarily put that spin on it. It's not about right now anymore. For that brief window from 2021 to basically about 2 weeks ago, it was about now. It was about this season. Now it's a little bit more in that business model of we're going to try and rebuild this thing. I don't think this is a fire sale, to tell you the truth. I don't think it's a full teardown, but there's aspects of it that are going to be tricky to work around and convince guys like Brandon Nimmo and Pete Alonso they should get behind it.
Well, with the Mets, it's not going well right now, and they've traded Scherzer, they've traded Verlander, they've traded Canha, they've traded David Robertson, and the jury's still out on Tommy Pham, what that's going to bring. But the Mets, it's been an active trade deadline for them, but we'll take a quick break, go to the other side of town on the other side of the break with the Yankees. There's a lot to go into with them, but we'll be right back here on this MLB Trade Line special for WFUV Sports.
What's going on, guys? Bridge Gotham here, your New York Giants beat reporter for WFUV Sports. Be on the lookout for weekly reports and game recaps on WFUV's YouTube channel. We'll be covering the action all season long. Feel free to follow me on Twitter at BGBridge for updates throughout the games. For all things Big Blue, stay tuned all season long.
Welcome back to this MLB Trade Deadline special, live on YouTube until about 6:30. We're approaching 5 o'clock, so the deadline is just over an hour away. And while we are an hour away, we're still waiting on something from the New York Yankees. They're in a tough position. They're 55-51. They're 9 games back in the AL East. They're 3.5 back in the AL wildcard, but still a lot of teams to chase in there. And the Yankees, this roster, the way it's constructed right now, you feel a trade may need to happen. But the issue for them is a lot of the pieces that they were looking at now aren't getting traded. Cody Bellinger off the market. Juan Soto was a long shot at first, but now the Padres look dead set on contending for that wild card in the National League. So for the Yankees, Jack, what kind of move can they make? Because right now they're staying stead pat. They're just staying where they are, and unless we get a different move, I feel like that's the wrong course of action here.
Well, so I think the bright side with the Yankees specifically, although there haven't been a ton of bright sides with the Yankees,
with the
Yankees
play.
as of late, is not only do I think that you have three reliable, more sort of rental pieces in Bader, Kiner Falefa, Wandy Peralta, but I think there are also 3 pieces that can generate quite a bit of value. So we haven't seen much up until this point. I think you said they're literally the only team in the league so far that hasn't
not even been involved with the trade.
Right.
So like even the Red Sox, like they trade Kike Hernandez. At least
Right.
they're
They're involved in a trade.
The Yankees have done nothing.
Right, but that's extremely on par for the kind of year that the Yankees have had this year. It's been a very impatient. The New York Yankee fan experience this season has been one of impatience. It's been one of demanding answers from Boone in a press conference and not getting them. It's been demanding answers on the return of an injured player and not getting it. So I can't say that I'm very surprised at the, I will say, delay or lack of urgency to go ahead and make a move so far. They only have an hour left.
But it's interesting. I mean, we talk about lack of urgency. This was just sent to me. The Yankees have been asking the Rays about Manuel Margot, who apparently the Rays are trying to trade. So if you're looking for an outfield piece or a left fielder maybe, Manuel Margot, he hits for contact pretty well. That could be a good option, and he comes from the Rays. I'm kind of surprised to see the Rays are trying to move him, but the Yankees, the left fielder has been an issue for, let's say, over 2 years at this point, and this season, they went into the season with Oswaldo Cabrera as their starting left fielder. That didn't work. He was not effective at the major league level, and now they've been trying Jake Bauers, who's done well, but his defense is a bit shaky, and then Isaiah Kiner Falefa, but these guys aren't meant to be real high-impact players, and the Yankees, if they're going to improve, left field's the area of need, but unless they can pull off a surprise deal, there's not a lot of players that really move the needle for me.
Brian, I think we do have a caller on the line, though, if you want to welcome them in. These Yankees, they have to make a move, though. I will say that much. They need to be a little bit more aggressive than what they've been so far when doing absolutely nothing. I have a larger point with that I'll get to in a bit, but we do have someone on the line waiting for
Yeah, we do have Ricardo on the line. Ricardo, thanks for calling in. What you got for us? It doesn't sound like we have him. That's unfortunate. Can't hear him here, so Ricardo, tough luck, but the Yankees, they got to do something. I mean, with the way the roster's constructed right now, I know you can rely on Aaron Judge coming back and be like, oh, well, Aaron Judge is just going to come back and carry the Yankees. Well, the way it's going right now, Rizzo's not hitting, Stanton's not hitting, DJ LeMahieu's not hitting, Volpe's not hitting. Their offense has been anemic all season long. So if you're going to have any chance of improving, you're going to need to add a bat.
I think where they are right now is a place of cautious optimism to where it's not that much different of a team from 2022. The results have been drastically different, though. That's the key difference here, is that it's not that different personnel-wise at all. You're 55-51. You're 3.5 games back of a wild card spot. They need some help, and they need health, which is why I'm a little surprised they didn't have a talk about maybe acquiring a Randall Grichuk. He's an outfielder, 307 average this year, 9 home runs. Crone, he would have also fit a first baseman, 11 home runs, 301 on base percentage. Candelario, for me, was someone that they should have had multiple conversations to try and acquire from Washington. He's been really good for them. A first baseman, can also play third base, 16 home runs, and is a switch hitter. So you get the benefits of the short porch, can hit him into the gap once or twice too, get you a couple doubles here and there. The Yankees need some more slug in their game. The surprising thing about this, though, is a lot of guys that you thought would play well just haven't. DJ, nope. Stanton, nope, because Stanton's made of porcelain. But when he does play, he hits home runs, he hits for high power. That hasn't happened. Not every year is going to be like 2022 as it pertains to the New York Yankees. I actually think now the smart pivot for them would be to go towards pitching. Try and get another starter, see if you can work on getting another bullpen arm. It'd be very similar then, in my mind, to the team that won a title in 2010, the San Francisco Giants. They were below league average in terms of RBIs, only slightly above the league average in terms of slugging percentage. Still won a title because you had some of those horses that could go deep into games for you as your starters. I think the Yankees could do something similar. You know you have Garrett Cole. Carlos Rodon could figure it out. Maybe a Flaherty you throw into that equation. If Severino can give you anything, maybe you put him in the bullpen, see what's hot there. I just think with where you are, trying to fix everything offensively in one fell swoop is not going to work. You're better off padding your strengths than trying to fix your weaknesses.
I mean, I feel like a very reoccurring theme so far in this year's trade deadline is the art of putting faith into prospects and the youth. And when you said that the bats is something that they need, both of you have said that the bats is something that they need desperate help with. And the one scenario that I could see that I think would benefit all parties, right, would be a trade. Not as much. You obviously you want to generate as most receive as much value in return as possible for who you're trading. But the hypothesized trade that I've kind of pondered about is more to just make room to bring up somebody who's been performing well. Now, we've seen, as much as I hate to say it, because for someone like me who does not like the Yankees, I very much enjoy this man as a ball player, Harrison Bader. Now, Harrison Bader seems to be on the chopping block, and understandably so, because yes, he's a phenomenal athlete. He's a great defender. He's been a pretty average hitter, and not the exact hitter that he's been when he was first received from the Cardinals to the Yankees last year. He was really the only bat in that Yankees lineup that had a pulse during the postseason run. So, yes, it may, at its core, at the surface, I should say, seem a little odd for him to be the one that you suggest. But who is behind him, Brian, in AAA, Scranton, hitting damn near 300 right now?
Look at this guy.
Who is it?
It's Estevan Florial, having a monster season in AAA. So, and he can't get on the big league roster. And with this season, this is what I've kind of wrestled with for the Yankees. They are in a position to contend, but looking at the current landscape and the market, they're not going to get a big piece that's going to drastically change the offense. So I don't know about going heavy on buying. So then you go from there, if they're not going to buy, they might need to sell. And you look at Harrison Bader, expiring contract. They've claimed to be interested in moving him. And by the way, you have Estevan Florial in AAA, who's got an OPS over the 900s. He's got 22 bombs. He's having a great season, but he is just stuck in AAA. And they've been bringing up outfielders left and right, still don't bring up Estevan Florial. So with him, I know he's been up at the big league level before, and he hasn't done well, but he hasn't been given really an ample sample size. If you look at the games that he's played, he played in 17 games in 2022, didn't start most of them. So what exactly do you expect out of him? I think, hypothetically, if you were to move Bader, you can bring him up and just let him play the rest of the season and just see what you have.
See, I think that's the Yankees maybe not wanting to show all of their cards, because if they know if they're to play Florial at the major league level and he doesn't perform, then his trade value would be significantly diminished at that point. Now, after the deadline, of course, bring him up, see what he can do. If he can help you at all offensively, that's a step in the right direction. I think in terms of trading Bader, if you're selling, yes, that's a good idea. But if you're in the acquisition market at this time, I don't know if that's what you want to be doing. Because as you said, Jack, he performed very well in the postseason.
He was
Without
he was
him,
the only bat.
I'm not sure I don't actually know. I know they don't get past Cleveland if not for Harrison Bader. He made
he had a big
several
Cleveland series.
several big hits at the right moments and did it again a couple of times this year. So I don't know how bullish I am on the Yankees selling him off, especially since I think he appreciates being a Yankee. That's something we didn't get to talk about on the Mets segment, but I'll bring up. There are certain guys that you kind of just accept their strengths and their weaknesses altogether because they want to be a part of your organization. I thought Max Scherzer was kind of in that vein for the Mets for a little while this year. Bader is kind of like that for the Yankees right now, to where, yeah, it's not perfect, but he at least wants to be here, and you know he'll put down a bunt. He'll steal a base. He'll do the little things that can help you win. That's not dismissing the Yankees' need for offense. I'm just saying you need players like that to be a championship-caliber club.
The issue with the Yankees, though, is that we don't know if they're buyers or sellers. They've leaned to the fact that they're trying to acquire and they might buy, but at the same time, I don't know what position they're in to do that. And it's not just Bader, too. They have other pieces that they've been open to moving. They've been open to moving Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, but I don't know what value you get for him. Wandy Peralta, a lefty out of the bullpen, teams could bite at him.
That's a mistake. If you're going to sell off Peralta, you're basically selling off one of your biggest strengths, which is your bullpen. Like, yeah, the bullpen has had moments.
The bullpen hasn't been that good recently, though.
But that you're still banking on that being a strength when the postseason comes because they're overworked. Like,
yeah,
right. I understand that there's multiple holes in this Yankees roster, but I don't see any reason why the lineup and bats would not be the first course of action. And the reason I say it is, Brian, let's poke a little fun at my own team while poking fun at yours. Right?
We can do that.
So Boston Red Sox, right? Are they ahead of New York or behind New York in the American League East right now?
They're ahead of New York.
Okay, ahead of New York.
Yankees are in last place.
Would you consider?
I said it.
Would you consider Boston to be a team that's good at pitching?
No,
not at all. They're not a consistent team when it comes to arms whatsoever. They've managed to win more games than the Yankees with extremely erratic pitching because they've at least been able to have a pulse offensively. Now, just today, this is the source I'm looking at is literally as of today, the New York Yankees rank 29th in the league in batting average. They have a team batting average of 229.
it's not good.
I understand that it takes arms and bats. I understand that there's been shortcomings in the New York Yankees pitching staff this year. Understood. We saw the atrocity in Baltimore on Sunday night that the whole world got to see on ESPN. I took great pride in watching that. But anyway, the point being is there's a certain point where, at least to give your team a fighting chance, a offense with a pulse, with momentum, can make up for at least a somewhat erratic pitching staff, which I just said, Boston being a perfect example. They're just outside of the wild card. So, yes, there are multiple holes that are in need of filling for the New York Yankees, but I'm going to say that if there is not a move that addresses the situation at the plate, I don't know what they're thinking.
Well, Harrison Bader was not in the lineup today, and a lot of people speculated about that he could be being moved in a trade. Well, he's signing autographs on the field at Yankee Stadium. I don't know if that means anything, but he's still a Yankee for now, and Aaron Boone said he was not moved out of lineup for trade deadline reasons, like he would say that he was if that was the case. But with the Yankees, the clock's ticking. It's 5:11 p.m. right now, and the deadline's at 6. So,
and I just don't know if there's a big offensive piece left out there for them. I think a lot of the names that everyone looked at and went, this should be a must-see guy for New York, are gone.
Yeah.
As I said before, I think Candelario was the big one for them. That would have been my top choice for the Yankees. I think now you're in this place where you cross your fingers that the offense can do something, and you bolster your rotation, if possible, and the front end of your bullpen. That way, the high-leverage guys like a Clay Holmes, a Michael King, or a Wandy Peralta aren't under the same amount of stress that they were under for the better part of the first half of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I really wanted the Yankees to make a run at Cody Bellinger, and for a long time, It was really looking like he was going to be available. The Cubs weren't in it, and he was a lefty. He could play left field, provide some power, which the Yankees have just been missing out of their left-handed hitters for the last couple of months, but then the Cubs went on a run, and now they're contending, and they ended up buying, and they took Candelario. So the Yankees Clock's ticking, 5:12 p.m., so we'll see what they do. We will take a quick break and discuss the Angels, who I think one of the interesting teams at this trade deadline. They've made some moves, so we'll talk to them after the break, but you're listening to this trade deadline special for WFUV Sports.
Brian Gregory here, joined with Michael Calamari and Andrew Galata, three of your hosts for Nosebleeds, WFUV's only baseball podcast.
Tune in every week as we recap the latest from the Bronx and Queens, as well as news from around the MLB.
You can listen to Nosebleeds on Apple, Spotify, WFUVsports.org, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Take a trip around the bases all season long with the Nosebleeds podcast on WFUV Sports.
What's going on, everyone? This is Danny Scott, your New York Jets beat reporter. Join me all season long for updates, features, and analysis as the Jets' young core looks to take flight. Follow me on Twitter, dscott_33, or check out our WFUV Sports YouTube page for all things Jets.
Welcome back to the trade deadline special. Brian Rabacs, Jack Warner, Colin Loughran here as the deadline is approaching, now 45 minutes away. And if you want to join in the conversation, please call in. 718-817-2750 is the number. Let's do some housekeeping before we transition to our next topic. Eduardo Rodriguez, the starter on the Detroit Tigers, has been a piece involved in the trade deadline. The Tigers are looking to move him, and they found a trade partner, the Los Angeles Dodgers. But Erod, he's got a no-trade clause. He invoked his no-trade clause, so he's not going to be a Dodger. I didn't see that coming. I saw the notification that he went to the Dodgers and think, okay, that's a good move for LA, but the no-trade clause, that's an area that I didn't see coming.
That's not just a good move for LA. It's a good move for Erod. I mean, he's getting off of the Tigers.
He's getting off the Tigers and he's going to the Dodgers.
which that's sort of the fun of this trade deadline time of the year, is that, does that mean there's something else cooking up in Detroit that led him to stay? Does that mean that there's something in Los Angeles that really shooed him away? Because I don't understand. You're having a career year. He's a 2.95 ERA, so literally a career year. I'm looking at all of his years in Boston. So fantastic year on a horrendous team, and a chance to go to the Los Angeles Dodgers, who pretty much guarantee to be a contender almost every year.
Well, Jeff Passan reported that the reason is unknown, so we're not sure. But while we're talking about the Los Angeles Dodgers, let's bring in our Los Angeles native. Nick Palmer is on the line. What's going on, Nick?
Hi, guys. I'd like to talk about a story of three front offices that our own Colin Loughran is very familiar with, and sort of get your guys' opinions on how they did at the trade deadline. One's a buyer, one's a seller, and one did absolutely nothing. I guess you can guess who the third team would be. The first team is the Los Angeles Dodgers, who were extremely proactive in the week leading up to the deadline, right? They first traded for Ahmed Rosario, a shortstop, which they needed to platoon with Rojas, and someone who could hit left-handed pitching for Noah Cinderbum, who hasn't been good since 3000 BC, and he can't strike anyone out if you pay him to. Then they go and get Kike Hernandez back as a utility player who increases the vibes of that clubhouse tenfold. And then they go to the White Sox, where they get the return of one of the most iconic relievers in LA history in Joe Kelly, who has been stellar so far, and a two-time All-Star in Lance Lynn, where they have a pitching program that is known to fix pitchers. So they checked all the boxes. They fixed their starting pitching since Buehler and Kershaw are out. They addressed their need for hitters against lefties, and they got their need for defensive backups at key positions. Dodgers, A+. Then let's talk about the Mets, who went in a completely different direction. And despite whatever Frank the Tank will tell you on Twitter, shedding Verlander, Scherzer, Canna, Robertson for an Acuna replica, as well as Drew Gilbert, who is a dog from the Astros, by the way, is their number one prospect. It doesn't even matter if they're paying over half of Verlander's salary, because Papa Cohen is made of money. They recognized they were failing, were setting up for 2026, and did their job. And finally, the Yankees, who are a double-decker bus filled with retirement home players and cripples with Brian Cashman asleep at the wheel. I cannot do this, you guys. I was begging for Cashman to do anything. I would be exhilarated if he said, you know what, we're shipping Gleyber Torres to Miami, and we're selling Wandy and Clay off for pieces and sending Bader off in a package where he has any semblance of value because he's a UFA next year for Dylan Carlson. Why are we talking about Dylan Carlson? He is hitting .230 with 5 home runs because we haven't had a left fielder for 3 years. And do you remember, just one last thing, do you remember like a week ago when we were talking about Cody Bellinger and Juan Soto? We're not getting those guys. Okay, fine. Let's talk about Randall Grichuk. Nope. Mark Canha. Nope. Teoscar Hernandez. Nope. And now we're talking about Dylan Carlson and Manuel Margot. And I know if they make this move, Cashman will be flouting it as a success. I'm having none of it. So either buy or sell with an aging team, but you cannot do nothing. Guys, I would please like your thoughts because I'm losing my mind over here in Southern California.
I was not anticipating that kind of energy from Nick Palmer. Wow. He's fired up.
But hey, though, you can get the overpriced Wagyu beef burger if you're there on time at the game.
Hey,
that's what's supposed to sell now.
Yankee Stadium. Listen, I've heard that the 99 burger is worth those $20.
Yeah, and guess what? The 99 burger has been at more Yankee games in Yankee Stadium this year than the actual 99 player.
That was
See, that's good.
I'm just being honest. No, I'm just being honest. Like what kind of product is this? Like what?
It's not. It's bad, but let's put it in perspective. This is bad for the Yankees.
Right.
For a normal run-of-the-mill team, this is not bad at all. This is competitive. For what the Yankees are supposed to be and who they're supposed to be, this is atrocious. The fact of the matter is you need to get more pieces if you have any designs on winning a championship. The whole idea that they were going to run it back from 22 to 23 and then expect a different result was ludicrous to me, especially now. Texas has gotten better. Houston's gotten better. I'd argue Boston's a lot better than they were last year. The Orioles have officially arrived. What did Cashman and company think was going to happen? Things change. Things evolve. Such is the case in the business sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, but Nick also talked about the Dodgers and the Mets, who we talked about the Mets already, and I think most of us approve of what they've been doing. But the Dodgers, I mean, they've made some really good moves when you talk about bringing Joe Kelly back and then Lance Lynn. Lance Lynn hasn't had a great year, but you look at the pitcher that he's been in the past and then what he can be, and he was right. The Dodgers are known to turn things around for pitchers, and if they get all-star Lance Lynn like he was in 2021, they could be going. And they did get Eduardo Rodriguez, but that trade fell through.
They're not expecting Lance Lynn to be a normal starter, I don't think. They're expecting Lance Lynn to throw 1 2/3 innings, 2 innings in the 5th or 6th, if one of their young studs like an Emmett Sheehan or a Bobby Miller can't get there. For that reason and for the purposes of experience and having veterans in the room that have been there, done that, the move to grab both Lynn and Kelly was spectacular. Not to mention, as Nick said to us on the phone, you flipped Noah Syndergaard for Ahmed Rosario.
Noah Bum, he called him.
That's a Friedman masterclass right there. Ahmed Rosario currently ranks in the 85th percentile in terms of expected batting average. The guy doesn't strike out a whole hell of a lot. He can get you some hits here and there. He puts up tough at-bats. Not big power numbers, but you don't need that. You have Mookie Betts. You have Freddie Freeman. J.D. Martinez, who I had said in January he was going to figure it out. He has done just that. He's battling injury now. He should be back by the end of the month for September and then that postseason push. If you're L.A., you're looking at the Atlanta Braves and you're going, that's a team. Those are the guys that we're going to have to beat. And I'm very excited for the prospect of that potential NLCS. I think that has the makings of a great 7-game series potentially.
And, I mean, the Dodgers, they've been active. On the other side of town, the Angels have been active too. And there was a lot of uncertainty as to how the Angels were going to approach the deadline. Obviously, they had Ohtani, and when the Angels were kind of far out of things, people loved dreaming up the idea of the Angels selling and Ohtani being on the market, and it could have been the biggest trade acquisition in MLB history. Well, the Angels look like they're going for it. They're buyers. They made the trade last week for Lucas Giolito, and that bolsters their rotation. I mean, he's been inconsistent this year, but you look at his numbers, he's had good starts and has had an above-average season as a whole. So you fit him right in behind Ohtani. That's a good trade. And then Randall Grichuk and CJ Cron, I really like that trade. I think Grichuk, you needed to do it because Taylor Ward just went down for the year with that unfortunate injury. And then CJ Cron, down year in Colorado, but they've had issues with first base all year long. They just DFA'd Jared Walsh. So now CJ Cron goes back to the team that he started with. I mean, the Angels, they have a lot of work to do, and they got to get hot, but I like the moves that they've made. I think they've done a good job of improving their roster to prime them to at least give them a chance. That's what you need.
Angels were in a position where if you didn't put something around Ohtani, then he's not coming back next year when he's in free agency. I think this is more about, look, we can do it, than them actually thinking they can win a World Series. Because I look around the American League and then look at what the Angels have put together, even with the additions, their pitching is nowhere near where it has to be for them to win a title. It's just not, especially not when you have Scherzer now in Texas and Verlander in Houston. I even think the Yankees have better pitching than the Angels do at this given moment because other than Shohei, you have Lucas Giolito now at the top of your rotation, and really that's kind of it. I'm not really moved by a Tyler Anderson, Reed Dempters, same type of thing. I don't think either of those guys can go more than 3 innings in a postseason environment. The offense you have to like because Grichuk can hit. Same thing with Cron. I just don't think that carries you all the way. I think that might get you into the dance, but I doubt they make noise once they get there.
And they put a graphic on the screen, so they got Grichuk, they have Cron from Colorado, and they did get Giolito, and at the center of it all, Shohei Ohtani. So the Angels are banking on getting these pieces and Shohei doing what he's done for the past really 3 years and just carrying this Angels team and hopefully getting to the postseason. But they need some help to get there because they're chasing a handful of teams.
Well, yeah, and again, you mentioned the pitching being a shortcoming all year. So I do think making additions in that area was also a great call. But again, Grichuk is a fantastic contact bat that adds to this lineup because the Angels, I feel like most of the 2010s were that team that, again, they had arguably the greatest baseball player of our generation, many would call it, or of that decade in Mike Trout, and were really never able to build anything around him. They were never able to put a structure underneath him that could take them to the postseason, to a pennant even. So, it's nice to see the Angels make a move that I think you look at it objectively gives them a pretty. It definitely increases their chances of any sort of postseason potential this year.
Yeah, when you look at the CJ Cron Grichuk trade, the big piece here is Grichuk. I mean, his numbers this year are really good, but if you look at the month of July that he had a spectacular July. He hit .344 with a .382 on base percentage, .719 slugging percentage, which it was 4th in Major League Baseball in that month, higher than his new teammate Shohei Ohtani. So 1101 OPS and a 180 WRC plus. That's a month of July right there.
And remember, Grichuk can play anywhere in the outfield.
Right.
You can place him literally anywhere.
I think even if they get in, though, then you're hoping for a barn burner type of game. The pitching is just not there.
You have Ohtani.
Ironically, though, if you manage to win the AL West, not likely, but let's play devil's advocate here. If they do, I think they're in a better position then than if they have to go through the wild card round because you could be smarter about how you use Ohtani as a pitcher and kind of adapt your strategy based on that. Because outside of him and Giolito, who, by the way, Giolito doesn't get the respect he deserves as a pitcher, in my estimation. I think he's kind of been hidden in some different places where I don't think people are really privy to his game.
He had a pretty bad year last year, though.
I still think there's a lot to like there, though.
There is,
and now
but he's just been inconsistent this year.
And
if he gives you White Sox Giolito that he had in the 3 years prior to last year, that's a huge get for the Angels.
I think, too, the whole finesse pitcher market has changed. It's about power now. It's about going north-south on guys. Giolito goes north-south. He can also go east and west with the best of them, and I think the finesse helps him there. I do think playing with the Angels will help him with that because he'll have good fielders behind him, especially if Trout comes back. You'll have a guy in the outfield that can range down basically anything.
Well, and again, I think that's part of the beauty of the trade deadline is where sometimes you do run into players and pieces of rosters that they may be coming off a poorly performing year, may be in the midst of a bit of an erratic year with regards to their overall performance, but all it takes is a front office being like, we need to get our hands on him. That's not telling the story of how a player truly is. Wait till we get our hands on him. We think that we can produce a different outcome because we've seen it from him in the past. I think we were just mentioning how impressive the Los Angeles Dodgers performance has been so far with regards to the trade deadline. They picked up Kike Hernandez. Now, again, does have experience playing in LA, so there's no real adjustment in terms of going to a new city, new team, all that. But arguably one of the most irritating players to watch on the Red Sox roster this year. I mean, truly a disappointing year, and they wanted to take him back. So I don't think that, I don't think any of the prior 2 seasons from Giolito is enough to necessarily look at the Angels funny for demanding him in a trade.
And the thing that I didn't realize, I mean, Colin, you kind of scoffed at the Angels winning the AL West, and I was kind of with that too. I was like, are we really bringing this up? But the Angels are 4.5 back in the West.
It's closer than people
It's
would
closer.
think.
It's closer than I thought it was.
Right.
And they're within striking distance now. With the Angels, we've covered them a bit, but we're a live show. We're giving live updates. This is a new developing situation with the Mets. According to Mike Puma, beat reporter for the Mets for the New York Post, he says Tommy Pham and Fordham alum, Tommy Pham poked his head into the manager's office and left the clubhouse in street clothes. No word yet that he's been traded, but the signs point that way. Where's he going?
To the 7 train to then transfer for the 4 to the Bronx.
Well, that's a tough transfer to make, though. I mean, but listen,
That's rush
Tommy
hour
Pham,
too, hopefully.
there you go. He's getting traded, and now it just is a matter of where. But, yep, Tommy Pham is the guy that we speculated. He was the last guy that would have went. And, yeah, now he's going that way. So it makes you think, if the Yankees are looking for a left fielder, is there any chance they do a crosstown trade and send him to the Bronx?
The thing is, who would you send to the Mets?
I mean, listen, obviously none of your top prospects. I mean, teams have been asking about Clayton Beeter, who's been a good prospect for them, who they got in the Joey Gallo trade. But with that, I mean, and here's another trade that just broke. The Texas Rangers are acquiring catcher Austin Hedges from the Pittsburgh Pirates. So the Rangers keep making moves. They keep adding. They get a catcher from the Pittsburgh Pirates. They have Jonah Heim, so he'll probably just slide in as a nice backup. But the Rangers are just trying to fill up depth any way they can. But Tommy Pham, we'll have to wait and see. And we'll get to the Rangers in a little bit. They might be the winners of the trade deadline so far, but that's a ways away. We'll take a short break and regather ourselves to talk about the Rangers at the trade deadline on this live episode for WFUV Sports. Stick around.
Hey everyone, I'm Will Grant.
And I'm Chris Persianen.
And we're 2 of the hosts for WFUV's very own basketball podcast, Pick and Pod.
Tune in weekly for updates and our takes on the latest around the NBA, as well as exclusive insight from our very own Knicks and Nets beat reporters.
We'll have you covered on everything from all of the NBA's latest drama we know and love,
to debating all year long which team will get to lift that golden Larry O'Brien in June.
So don't miss a beat from the hardwood on WFUV's Pick and Pod.
What's up, everyone? I'm Julia Moss, one of the hosts of WFUV's women's sports podcast, All In. Join us each week as we break down everything from the WNBA, women's collegiate sports, the NWSL, and so much more. We're also joined by recurring hosts including Maddie Bamonte, Taylor Masetta, Sam Bohr, and Annabelle Watson. All In is a production of WFUV Sports.
Showing up on the first page of Google might...
Brian Rabacs, Jack Warner, Colin Loughran here on this trade deadline special. We are 5:34 p.m. That's where we're at, and we're going to take you to the deadline just 25 minutes away. So we're looking forward to it, but with that, I mean, a lot's happened already. So I think with the deadline, this has been a more active deadline than I've been anticipating, and I think that's kind of where we're at. I don't know about you guys, but we've had some great callers. Nick Palmer brought the energy.
That was nuts.
Dan Bartels also did great. Maddie Bamonte called in as well. We didn't get Ricardo, though. That was kind of tough. But we are still taking callers, so 718-817-2750. That's the number. And now we just look at the Texas Rangers. The Texas Rangers, they might be the winners of the deadline so far. So they got Scherzer. We talked about that. But they've also made some other moves. They got Jordan Montgomery from the St. Louis Cardinals, who are in a fire sale. And then also, this was a little bit a while ago, but Aroldis Chapman, who's kind of had a resurgent year in Kansas City, he went to the Rangers and is already making an impact. So the Rangers, are they the winners of the deadline right now? That's kind of the way I saw it coming into today, but maybe the Astros changed that or the Dodgers changed that. What are your guys' thoughts?
I mean, what I see so far in at least the moves with their pitching arsenal is reliability. I mean, you have Jordan Montgomery, who I think is a huge pickup from them, especially with the Cardinals willing to, they're obviously, like you said, in the midst of a bit of a fire sale right now. But Jordan Montgomery, 3.42 ERA this year, so, he's having himself a pretty decent year. Now, landing Scherzer to me was more the kind of the, it generates good conversation because there's only so much that you could really, like, Scherzer right now, I feel like for this year is more of a name. I feel like for the Mets, he hasn't produced what Mets fans would hope to have been produced out of him. So I'm more curious to see how well that Scherzer move is going to really pay off for them.
I think that was a lot like someone buying stock in Apple or Coca-Cola. Even if it's not performing well at the moment, it's a blue chip stock. You go out and buy it knowing, all right, this is probably a very safe investment for me to make. In terms of the Texas Rangers, I don't know if they necessarily won the deadline. I want to wait until the actual moment it comes to make that judgment call. But this season, I have figured out, and I think all of you have too, they are the real deal. They're top 10 in terms of home runs, RBIs, batting average, and slugging percentage. Their pitching is very good. Even before grabbing Scherzer, I think they had a couple of guys that could flat out perform. Nate Eovaldi, he hasn't pitched since July 18th, but on the year, 11-3, 2.69 ERA. Montgomery's coming, Scherzer's coming, the reinforcements are on the way. Montgomery, for those who don't know, he's been very good this season as well. 3.42 ERA, ranks in the 59th percentile in terms of hard hit percentage. That stuck out to me because when you get to October, it's very hard to strike out batters. These guys are putting up competitive at-bats all game long. Sometimes you just need some soft contact, ground ball to second base, shortstop, get you out of the inning. I think Jordan Montgomery could be that type of arm for Texas. That's not to say he's going to go in there and throw you 7 innings of shutout ball. Could you slot him in the 6th inning or the 7th for an out or two or a couple batters? Yeah, I think you could. And with that offense that Texas has at their disposal, I think now they have the pitching to kind of get them through the chase.
So this is what I've liked the most about what the Texas Rangers have done. I think they've set up their pitching staff so well coming out of the deadline. I mean, you have the top of your rotation with Eovaldi, and Martin Perez has had a solid year, and then you look at adding Scherzer and Jordan Montgomery to that. So your postseason rotation is pretty much locked. I mean, you have your ace, and then obviously Max Scherzer is Max Scherzer, and then you go through the rest. So with the other starters that they have, so you look at someone like John Gray or an Andrew Heaney, those guys could just easily go into the bullpen and be those long relievers that help you get out. And even Jordan Montgomery, too. He's going to start games in the regular season, but we saw him in the brief wild card series with St. Louis last year. He worked a little bit out of the bullpen and was effective. So with that, they have a lot of flexibility as to how Bruce Bochy wants to manage his pitching staff in October. And, I mean, you provide that flexibility. It just adds to the talent that the team already has. I mean, this is why I'm saying that the Texas Rangers have been winning the trade deadline. They're killing it, and I think they're really primed to go on a deep run in the playoffs.
Well, and the other thing that's insane is this is really Jacob DeGrom's replacement, if you really think about it. I mean, how's that for a headline? You know, you lose Jacob DeGrom to yet another tragic injury, and your replacement come the trade deadline is none other than Max Scherzer.
Not precisely on topic, but it is trade deadline season. We have to jump around when we can. The expectation, as per Joel Sherman, is that the Cardinals will trade Jack Flaherty, perhaps in conjunction with a Dylan Carlson or a Tyler O'Neill. Braves and Dodgers mentioned as being in on this potential deal. I'm going to throw in another team. I think the Yankees should be all over.
The Yankees, I mean, the Yankees have been linked to Carlson, but yeah, you were talking about Flaherty with the Yankees as well.
I think that'd be a smart move for them.
Flaherty, I mean, he's been in about everyone's trade conversations. I mean, he's a talented pitcher, but just hasn't really been able to piece it all together in recent years. So if he goes somewhere, he can make an impact if a team is willing to get him right. And obviously the Cardinals are selling off. But you look at the AL West, and with the Rangers at the top of that division, the big thing is going to be holding off the Astros, which is going to be really tough. The Rangers started out really hot and then kind of cooled off, and the Astros gained some ground on them. So they're half a game back. But with the moves that the Rangers made, are they primed to hold off the Astros for the rest of the season? Because at the same time, it's still the Houston Astros.
I think they cross their fingers that they don't have to play them in the postseason. I think they could outlast them in the regular season, but come October, I don't know if I want to have to be necessarily facing Justin Verlander and an Astros team that has won titles. I just don't know if Texas can beat them mano-a-mano in a 7-game series.
But, I mean, if you look at Eovaldi's hurt right now, but has had a stellar Cy Young caliber season. As long as last year's wild card Max Scherzer doesn't show up in October, then they can be primed to be in a good spot. And again, just these weapons that they have out of the bullpen. And on the topic of weapons out of the bullpen, Aroldis Chapman, listen, I know he had his issues in New York.
Oh, it's paining you to say this right now. I can see it in your eyes.
But with that, he's had a career resurgent year. He's got a 3.38 ERA, and he's dotting 103 again. 3.38 ERA with the Rangers, by the way. He's pitched 8 innings there, so he's done a good job. And, I mean, you see these videos coming up all the time now. He's dotting 103 on the corner. So this is stuff that we weren't seeing in New York last year. He couldn't have any command of the strike zone whatsoever. So to see him doing it this year, it's a little odd. It's kind of funny, but Chapman is back. And if you have him as a late inning arm in October, that's going to prime you really, really well.
Unless you're facing Rajai Davis.
Or Jose Altuve.
Or Rafael Devers. I mean, I guess I'll give you that one. I mean, we could just go on, but...
Well, no, but it's definitely refreshing to see him dotting 103 again when you consider, you know, his struggles in the past. A lot of people immediately pointed the finger to how hard he throws. It was, oh, well, he's just trying to throw rear back and throw 105 every pitch. And then you saw at a certain point for a year or two there, he was lower in velocity, not too much lower in velocity, but the average fastball was not, 99 to 102 like it usually was. And clearly he's figured something out, because you noticed there was a few year stretch where his velocity was lower.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be very curious to see what clicked for him, because now he's like, everyone's seen the clips. He is back up to 103.
Maybe it's just the pressure of not playing in New York.
You never
Could
know.
be. As far as Houston goes in terms of combating Texas, I need more out of the Astro offense. I think Jose Abreu has been disappointing for them this year.
The most disappointing player in baseball this year.
10 home runs,
arguably.
56 RBIs. Someone that I think could really have a coming out party against Texas in a potential playoff series. And I'm surprised the Mets didn't go after this guy in the trade for Verlander. Chas McCormick. He has been under the radar good this year. He's hitting .285. He's played 66 games only, so a smaller sample size, but in those 66 games, good average, 13 home runs, 44 RBIs, 11 stolen bases. I just feel like they're going to have to get an advanced level of play from certain guys that have underperformed thus far this season. I think Alex Bregman is also in that conversation. Not that he's been bad, 18 home runs, 69 RBIs, hitting .252, but now that you're at this juncture of having to put up with a Texas team that is really competitive and really powerful, your more key guys got to step up. And for me, that means Abreu, Bregman, Yordan's going to be Yordan. But if those two guys can really step up their game in addition to what you get from Alvarez, Houston's going to be really hard to beat.
Well, you're talking marquee guys. They just got two of their marquee guys back. Yordan Alvarez and Jose Altuve both just came off the IL. So things look like they're clicking for Houston, and they just added Justin Verlander, too, who's going to be right back at the top of that rotation with Framber Valdez, who's killing it on the mound this year. So with the Texas Rangers, I mean, they're having a great year, but at the same time, these Houston Astros just aren't going away, and they got a lot better at the deadline, and their pieces are back. So we've touched on the AL West. Let's head over to the National League West, where things have been pretty active in that division trade-wise. We talked about the Dodgers. They got Lance Lynn and Joe Kelly from the White Sox, and then Kike Hernandez as well. Almost had Eduardo Rodriguez, but that fell through. But other teams have been active too. The Diamondbacks pulled off a huge trade yesterday. Paul Sewald traded from Seattle. I didn't see that coming at all. I mean, you look at Sewald, he's having a terrific year on the mound, and it's just really puzzling to see that the Mariners just moved off of him. I wasn't expecting it. He's got what, a 2.93 ERA this year, ERA plus 139. He's been their closer. He's got 21 saves, and now they just moved him. I didn't see this coming, but that's a huge get for the Diamondbacks. That's a huge get. Their bullpen has been kind of iffy. If there's one weak part of that team, it is their bullpen. Now you have a sure thing at the back end.
I would have liked to have seen them invest more in starting pitching as well, but the Sewald move is key for them. Right now, Diamondbacks 57-50, 3.5 out of the NL West's top slot. Having a reliable closer in these late-year situations is critical, especially in a division like this where the Dodgers got some sluggers. The Giants got the same thing going on. You're going to have to maybe get out of a bases-loaded jam. Who do you want out there pitching in those situations? I think Sewald can be that type of guy for them. Right now, you look at this West. I don't think anyone thought it was going to be quite this competitive coming into the year. I think people made the assumption it would be the Dodgers and it would be the Padres because those are the flashy names with a lot of the talent. Soto with those Padres, they've underperformed so far. Really, now you look at it, I see this as a three-horse race to win the West. I think the Giants are in the conversation. I think the Diamondbacks are in the conversation. Of course, LA at the top. I don't know who necessarily wins the division. I know who I think will have the most postseason success. But if you were to ask me right now who wins the West, I'm very tempted to say Arizona comes to win the division.
Okay.
I don't think they go further than LA. But I do see this as a situation where if you're the Dodgers, right, you have an understanding that you have older guys on your team. Maybe not older in the sense that they're geriatric, like what the Yankees might have going on or what people thought the Mets had going on. But you might rest a Clayton Kershaw a little bit more. You might rest a Mookie Betts or a Freddie Freeman to understand that October is what's going to matter. The Diamondbacks don't have that same dynamic going on. They're just trying to get in. You have a Corbin Carroll. He's young. He's energetic. He bounces back a little bit quicker than someone like a Freeman or a Betts. Not to say that either of those guys are past their prime. They're very much in their prime. Different situations, though. Going to be very fascinating to see who wins the West ultimately.
We're going to head back to the phone lines here. 718-817-2750 is the number. Lou Orlando is calling from Yankee Stadium. Lou, what's up, man? What you got for us?
Well, what's going on, guys? You guys have been killing it so far. I have a Brian Cashman theory. This is why he's
okay.
Actually, you're not looking at it the right way. He's a PR genius. Right, what are we talking about? There's no outfield that the Yankees can get that fans would be happy about. There's not trading for Soto. Bellinger's not available. The Yankees trade for Dylan Carlson at 4:30. What's going to be the reaction on Twitter? Doesn't change the lineup. Judge is still going to walk 3 times, and they're going to get killed. But if the Yankees look like they're not going to do anything, and they just wait till like 5:55, and then they trade for Gavin Sheets, the reaction is not, why did we trade for Gavin Sheets? It's, holy cow, they made a move. It's a good PR move for Cashman, I think.
Well, I mean, Lou, that's a good way to think about it. I mean, but listen, the Yankees, there's got to be some urgency here with the Yankees, but
Listen, I had no idea what they're doing.
Lou.
Tommy Pham's a diamond guy. So it's like, there's no one for the Yankees to trade for unless it's Dylan Carlson. There's no way they can do nothing, right?
Yeah.
Am I crazy?
Tommy Pham off the market. Arizona Diamondbacks acquiring Tommy Pham, according to Jeff Passan. I mean, wow. That's a big name that just got taken off the market, and we were just talking about the Diamondbacks. They just got a big bat in their lineup.
They're coming.
Maybe this is the way the Yankees sell this season. It's not that they're going to trade Bader. It's not that they're going to trade your relievers. They're just not going to do anything, and the slow burn's going to continue. We might be in the worst reality because that might be what they do.
Listen, I mean, there's a method to their madness, Lou. There is always a method to their madness.
I think I found it. I'm really enjoying my PR spin on this. if a trade breaks at 5:58, it doesn't matter who it is. It could be it could be Scott Podsednik coming out of retirement.
You had to name drop Scott Podsednik, yep.
It was always Scott Podsednik, Brian.
It was always Scott Podsednik. Lou.
I think that's it for me.
Yeah, Lou, have fun at the game tonight. We'll see if they make any moves. Keep us updated on Twitter. Thank you for calling.
Of course.
So, bombshell dropped that Tommy Pham, I mean, right as we're talking about the Diamondbacks, Tommy Pham goes to Arizona. So, big bat right in the middle of the lineup. What are we initially feeling about this trade? Home run for Arizona, in my opinion.
I mean, just a huge addition. I mean, I've been the biggest Tommy Pham. That's pretty much been the main Met that I've put forward in anything positive to talk about with the Mets season this year. But as you mentioned earlier in the show, a contact bat would be a drastic understatement. But not to mention someone who you can move around the outfield, confidently move around the outfield.
Sure.
I think this is a fantastic pickup for Arizona.
I think it's combating something very important in the West, and that's the pitching. You get Tommy Pham because you believe that he can fight off hard pitches against a Clayton Kershaw or, dare I say, a Walker Buehler if he comes back over the course of the regular season. Getting someone like this puts your lineup in a better position because he just makes pitchers flat out work.
We're in the real end. We're in the fast lane here with the trade deadline.
It's almost midnight, and they're trying to finish their essay.
Things are just rapidly going. We got another trade. Orioles are finalizing a deal for right-hander Jack Flaherty from the St. Louis Cardinals. So the Orioles have been looking for a starting pitcher, and there they go. They get one in Flaherty, who has a lot of high upside.
Flaherty, definitely a guy that would bolster Baltimore. I think they look at themselves as a team that's window is just opening. To get someone like him to kind of help anchor your pitching staff on an October run is huge. I think, especially given that Rushman and Gunnar Henderson have overperformed expectations. Not that we didn't think they were going to be great players, but they're entering elite status at a very young age. Combine that with now a guy who has had his ups, has had his downs. If you can get him right, the Orioles are going to put themselves right in position to win the AL East and really start running away from a team like a Tampa Bay that has the mathematical equation to win the division, make an October run, but the Orioles are just building better talent, in my estimation.
I mean, with the Orioles, the weakest part of their team is probably their starting pitching. And that's not a knock on most of the guys, but they just haven't really been up to par with. They don't have a bona fide ace, is what I'm trying to say. And the Jack Flaherty deal doesn't even really move it that much in that direction, but it's an improvement. And If they try to get another starter, if Blake Snell is on the market, maybe they go for him. We heard that they were interested in Verlander too, but selling with Jack Flaherty, I mean, Jack Flaherty's got the stuff. He throws hard, and he's done well at times. He had a really good 2019 season where he had a 2.75 ERA, 152 ERA plus, led the league in WHIP. I mean, he had a great year, but now since then he's dealt with a lot of injuries and just hasn't been as effective. But, I mean, look what the Orioles have done with some of their pitchers. I mean, Bautista, Yennier Cano, I mean, they have weapons in the back end of their bullpen, and if they can fix Jack Flaherty and you can get a bona fide ace on top of your rotation, the Orioles are scarier than they are right now.
There's a lot hedging on this for their postseason aspirations because the bullpen is very good, as you mentioned, with Bautista really being the main bopper there. But if you look at the rotation, it's not the best in the world. Kyle Gibson has been okay, 10-6 with a 4.53 ERA. Bradish, he's been decent too, 6-6, 3.29. But outside of that, yes, Tyler Wells, he's currently on the 40-day. Oh, no, 40-man run. No, Tyler Wells has had his moments as well. But I think just you needed someone that is going to scare opposing hitters a little bit. Not that Gibson and Bradish can't do that, but there's a difference between facing Flaherty and one of those guys, in my estimation, especially if you can get him right. And the Orioles have now shown they can develop young talent in the right kinds of ways.
That's a good
It'll
point.
be fascinating to see if they can do it with a starting pitcher. We've seen them do it with position players now. Can they do it with a starter?
It just depends. Go ahead.
No, wait, continue because I have a different point.
It just depends what Jack Flaherty that they get. Are they getting 2019 Flaherty, or are they getting the inconsistent Flaherty who's just kind of going to be pieced maybe as their two-starter in their rotation? It remains to be seen, but the Orioles, they are busy. They did just get Shintaro Fujinami a couple weeks ago to add to their bullpen, or not a couple weeks ago, very recently. So they've been adding, and they show that this team is for real. Jack, the floor is yours.
Yes.
I got my point about the Orioles out of the way.
So pivoting back to the NL West, just because that was what the conversation was on previously, I don't know how much more can transpire with 5 minutes to go until 6 o'clock, but there is a tweet from Ken Rosenthal involving the whole Eduardo Rodriguez thing perhaps not being entirely done.
Okay. Oh, really?
He says Dodgers are talking to the Red Sox about James Paxton.
Ooh.
Still outside chance for Erod, who would need to reverse the decision on his no trade. Source tells The Athletic. Both are considered long shots.
Yeah. So I guess the Erod thing's not totally done, is what you're saying.
He referred to it as a long shot.
It's looking really unlikely.
And we're 5 minutes to 6 o'clock.
Well, yes, but 5 minutes to 6 o'clock. If they get James Paxton in that rotation too, get another impact lefty. I mean, you pivot from Erod to Paxton. That's not bad. Now, sticking with the West, we got the return for Tommy Pham for the Mets. So they get Jeremy Rodriguez, 17-year-old shortstop, who's playing currently in the Dominican Summer League. So they get another really young piece. They got two really young teenagers for David Robertson. Now they get another one. I mean, I like what the Mets are doing, but at the same time, these guys are not going to be major league ready for maybe 3 or 4 years. You want prospects that have a chance to make an impact soon, and I just don't see someone like Jeremy Rodriguez, who's 17, being on the roster.
According to Fangraphs, he's ranked 31 in the D-backs farm system, so
31?
Definitely reason to be optimistic in terms of what the Mets are getting back. But, Brian, you're pointing to something larger that I also think is important, in that this was not the vision. It wasn't supposed to be 2025, 6, or 7. No, it was supposed to be 2022, 23, or 4 at the latest. You're basically now telling your fans, we were wrong. We're doing this over now. We're doing it a different way. They're taking a page out of the book of the Dodgers playbook. But, I'll add a caveat to that. This is the Steve Cohen version of it. Because the Dodgers have developed a lot of young talent, but now Cohen is essentially using his money every which way. He's going to sign the big-name guy like a Scherzer or a Verlander, or sign Tommy Pham to a short-term contract, or trade for someone they can then trade again and flip it for prospects.
It happened.
Big news. The Yankees have made a trade. I know.
It happened.
The Yankees are acquiring right-handed reliever Kanan Middleton from the Chicago White Sox. That's the big move the Yankees had up their sleeve. Kanan Middleton.
Wait, that's true. Yeah, Lou absolutely hit the nail right on the head.
I guess something's better than nothing, but adding a reliever. I don't know. Their bullpen.
I'm not mad that they added a reliever.
I'm not mad, but
they shouldn't have just added a reliever. It should have been more than just a single reliever. It still could be. There's 2 minutes left. There's room for optimism.
Well,
yet.
yeah, and also the deadline is in 2 minutes, but I'm assuming there's going to be news that breaks after the deadline. So we'll see. But just on the surface of it, Kanan Middleton, 3.96 ERA for the White Sox. White Sox are just trading a bunch of pieces, 1.11 ERA plus. Who knows? We saw the Yankees trade for Clay Holmes 2 years ago, and his ERA was in the 5s when they got him, and he ended up being a big piece. So could this be a Matt Blake product where he ends up being a shutdown reliever? The Yankees have been looking for high leverage guys and more depth in their bullpen. Their bullpen, as of late, has just been shot. They've been overworked, so I guess adding a new reliever isn't the worst thing in the world, but I'm sure a lot of people were expecting them to go elsewhere.
I was expecting more. I do like the fact that they added a reliever because the arms they do have now are overtaxed. You look at someone like a Wandy or a Clay Holmes, they pitch a lot of innings.
That's what I'm saying. The Yankees need to maybe add another one to add some, just to soften the blow on some of these guys. It looks like some nights that Tommy Kahnle's just going out there every night.
This tells me that there's a belief in the organization that they already have enough. They're banking on last year's regular season.
They can't.
I think last year's regular season changed the calculus because coming out of 2021, it was understood they were going to need more to compete. But then 2022 happened, and they were red hot for the beginning of the year. There were comparisons to the 1927 Yankees. If I'm sitting in that front office, it's a lot less expensive to go on hope from here. It's a very bad strategy. But that's essentially what the Yankees are doing. They're saying we have enough to compete if the guys that we put in this clubhouse
they have
can
enough
go
to
out
compete.
And do what they.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying this is what the thought is.
As this with the mindset that they have, I don't think they believe they have enough to make a run. Now, if your definition of compete is get the last wild card spot and play an AL Central team in the wild card series, win that, you get to the DS, and the season's not a complete failure, I guess that's fine. But the Yankees, it's just a bizarre deadline. But I guess they were in limbo and they couldn't do a whole lot. 6 p.m. by the way, so officially the deadline is over, and we'll just see if there's any more news that comes. But Kanan Middleton, guys. That's the big acquisition for the New York Yankees.
Impressive PR theory from Lou Orlando.
He got it 100% right.
He said they were gonna make a trade for the sake of making a trade, and look what happened.
Lou Orlando just had a tweet, and I was going to read it, but my phone died. So
don't worry, I got you.
Please.
We'll have to see if anything breaks further. There's always one or two straggling
There's always a couple
that go down.
So I have Lou's tweet in front of me on this laptop here. At 6 p.m., we'll wait and see if anything rolls in late, but as it stands now, the Yankees had about as underwhelming of a deadline as they could have. They didn't buy, and they didn't sell, which is exactly what they did. Kanan Middleton's not buying. They could improve, but Kanan Middleton... What's that going to do? That does nothing to help the offense. The offense is the glaring weakness of your team. So this actually, you're adding Kanan Middleton to what's been a strength for most of the season. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. I'll support the move, but they could have done more.
I think they're padding their strengths. I said it when we were having our Yankees segment of the show. I think they have this idea that if they pad what they're good at, it'll make up for their weak spots.
But they can't hit. The team can't hit.
They can't. No.
I understand that it was not a glorious market with regards to bats, and a lot of players that were highly sought after and the Yankees did have their eyes on already got taken by other teams already.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see how this is a win. If he's a good pitcher, great. If he helps,
I'm sure he'll be a good arm.
I'm sure he'll be a great reliever. looked good. I still don't see how this is a win.
Well, we've reached the 6 p.m. deadline, and we were talking about how late news can roll in, but Jeff Passan reported that Dylan Cease officially was not traded. So he remains in Chicago with the White Sox. We kind of saw that coming. They showed indications that they didn't have much interest in trading him. So
a reason has came out for Eduardo Rodriguez
what do you got
invoking
for us,
his no-trade clause. He cited a desire to remain closer to family on the East Coast.
Okay, that makes sense. So
why didn't he request a trade to Boston?
The Red Sox need pitching, Jack.
And need him back. He was great with Boston.
He's your guy.
That's your guy.
I don't know. We'll take a short break right now. We're kind of nearing the end of things, so we'll just wait and come out of the break, see if anything comes back, but we'll be right back here, so stick around.
Hi, I'm Michael Calamari, reminding you to tune into New York's longest-running sports call-in show, One-on-One. Catch all the breaking sports news, hot takes, inside scoops from our beat reporters, and interviews with people around the world of sports. One-on-One airs every Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. on YouTube Live, and once again at night from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. on 90.7 FM. Want more One-on-One? Catch our Wednesday edition of the show, One-on-One nightly from 8:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. on Twitter and YouTube Live. Join the conversation and tune in to One-on-One, New York's longest-running sports call-in show.
Hey everybody, Sam Davis here. Check out WFUV Sports on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook at WFUV Sports, and Instagram at WFUV_sports. There you can find all of our content from our beat reporters covering all the New York professional sports, as well as clips and full shows from One-on-One, New York's longest-running sports call-in show. For everything WFUV Sports, follow us on our socials.
Brian Rabacs, Jack Warner, Colin Loughran here on WFUV Sports' live MLB Trade Deadline special. We're going until 6:30 here, but the trade deadline, it has passed, and just to kind of update a couple of things. The Tigers, they traded or attempted to trade Eduardo Rodriguez to the Dodgers. He invoked his no-trade clause. So now officially past the deadline, according to Ken Rosenthal, the Tigers did not trade Eduardo Rodriguez. So he stays in Detroit. And looking at a couple other teams, no moves for the Minnesota Twins, the leaders in the AL Central right now. So they didn't make any moves. But the Mets made one last move in their fire sale. They traded reliever Dominic Leone to the Angels. Every Mets fan's favorite has been traded.
I don't know if I can call it a fire sale necessarily.
He's
but
part of it.
He's a part of a sale.
Part of it.
It's more like a garage sale, though. They were selling all of the old things that they didn't
more like
want
a
to keep
garage
around.
sale.
They sold
Wow.
2 old pitchers and a couple of pieces that probably have some high value elsewhere. I think the key example of that was the Tommy Pham trade.
Mhm.
I mean, that spells it out to me, is that they were willing to send someone to a real contender. Leone, more so just another move that they can free up some space and see what someone has from their farm system to come up in September from the bullpen.
I was going to say, is there any word on the return for Leone yet?
No. There's nothing that I'm seeing. I'm just seeing he's been traded to the Angels. I mean, you're not getting much for.
Well, yeah.
Corbin Carroll or bust. Corbin Carroll for Dominic Leone, 1-for-1.
You think the Angels would give Shohei for Leone?
I think they'd give Trout and Shohei for Leone.
Listen, Shohei is not enough. You got to throw Mike Trout in there. But looking at the Mets, assuming that they are done, Adam Ottavino did not get traded, and Brooks Raley also did not get traded. So those two who were in trade talks and discussions, they remain with the Mets. And looking at the Yankee side of it, as of right now, no one got traded. Harrison Bader's still there. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa not traded. Wandy Peralta not traded. Luis Severino, I guess no one was taking calls on him. He's not traded. And then Gleyber Torres, who teams were fielding calls for and trying to make a move on, the Yankees weren't budging. So he stays with the Yankees, and now we'll just see if any news breaks. But I mean, you look at teams that didn't really do much. I believe we have the return for Leone right now. So once I get that, I'll read it out. So the Mets traded Leone to the Angels for their 9th ranked prospect, Jeremy Jackson, second baseman and shortstop. So you got something. You got something for Leone, but
What'd Billy Epler say on the phone?
hey, I mean, maybe the
Who
Angels,
does he have dirt on over there?
Maybe the Angels just saw something in him.
I was going to say, that's pretty much the second trade for New York where I was like, there's no way that was a good return, and then was shocked upon hearing the return. I mean, I think between that and the two getting the 1-4 from Houston for Verlander, I think the Mets did a good job this year. I think, again,
given the circumstances,
again, you hit the nail right on the head by saying that like it was supposed to be a World Series this year, right?
Whoa.
And what?
There's another trade. There's a trade that just broke. Josh Bell has been traded to the Miami Marlins. The Guardians make a move. They get a power bat. They trade Gene Segura and infield prospect Khalil Watson. Also, the Mets also made a trade. They acquired Phil Bickford and Adam Korolak from the Los Angeles Dodgers. So they get bullpen pieces to add.
Cool.
Good for them.
Yeah.
But I mean, Josh Bell to the Marlins. The Marlins, they're looking to get that offense up. They have power bats, and Josh Bell fits that mold. I mean, you look at Soler and Bell. If those two guys are just hitting the ball out of the ballpark, they have their contact guy in Arise. But I don't know. The Marlins are kind of trying to get an all-around good offense, and Josh Bell, I think, definitely makes that happen.
And Segura heading to Cleveland.
Segura is headed to Cleveland, yes.
See, they were surprisingly quiet this deadline, but I like Segura for them because I think he offers something that they don't have, and that's kind of that dual-purpose approach, outside of their key guys, obviously, but they're very much a contact-oriented team. Segura can do a little bit of both for you, more of a contact hitter, of course, but he'll pop one every once in a while. And if you're Cleveland right now, you're looking at that division, it's never a powerhouse division by any stretch of the imagination. It's basically been the Yankees' stepping stone to the ALCS for years now. you had to do a little bit more if you were Cleveland. But I think it speaks to the type of market it was. And it was a seller's market. And if you're Cleveland, you're not really willing to give up whoever you might have up your sleeve in the farm system for a rental that could maybe possibly get you to the ALCS. And when you look around, it's hard to blame them. All the other teams in the American League got better, and Cleveland and Minnesota, that whole division really.
This trade doesn't make Cleveland better.
I think it puts them in a different territory, though.
No, I mean, Gene Segura's had a dreadful season.
I don't think it matters. I think
it matters.
I think it matters insofar as why he was traded in the first place. But if you're Cleveland, getting one guy and swapping it out for Josh Bell, who wasn't fabulous,
I think maybe it just shows how little they value Josh Bell.
Right.
Just
so
wanted to move him.
And maybe they think that there's something about Segura's approach that they could adjust and kind of tailor to their strategy, because two very different teams in terms of what they're trying to do with the baseball.
Yes.
Miami and Cleveland, much different at the plate. Cleveland's definitely trying to do that death by a million paper cut style that the Mets did last year. Maybe they feel like Segura could add to that repertoire for them.
I'm not seeing it right away with dealing him for Josh Bell.
Why is that, my friend?
Because going along with what you're saying, I don't think that Gene Segura he hasn't had the year that I think makes him that valuable. Like if we're looking at the return on investment, especially given his age as well, I don't know if that's a piece that I would have made a move right at the trade deadline for.
There was a really confusing tweet from Ken Rosenthal on my timeline saying that, he already deleted it, but he did say that Garrett Cooper was in the trade for Josh Bell, which doesn't seem to be the case. I don't know if that means that Garrett Cooper went somewhere else.
Well, and then he just tweeted a correction tweet.
What did he tweet?
He said, correction, Marlins acquired Josh Bell from Guardians.
Oh, so he had his teams completely mixed up. I don't know. But the Yankees also, you got the package that they dealt in their end of the Kane Middleton deal. Juan Corella, he goes to the White Sox in that deal. So I think we're kind of just like finalizing everything. The Padres, though, we just brought them up. They didn't do much at the deadline. I mean, we've talked about that maybe they can sell, and they're still pretty far out of the wild card picture, but they're not selling. They're just going to go with it with the talent they have. What do you think?
For what it's worth on the Segura point, and I will get back to that.
Please.
82nd percentile in terms of whiff percentage, 92nd percentile in terms of max exit velocity, 89th percentile in terms of K percentage. The numbers you don't like, 27th percentile in terms of walk percentage. So basically what they're looking at is a guy who doesn't strike out a whole lot but can hit the ball really hard. Mm-hmm. If they can tailor him to be a little bit more patient, they're probably thinking he can be a good contact piece for them.
So Garrett Cooper is going to the Padres.
Interesting.
So Ken Rosenthal just mixed it up in the Josh Bell tweet, but Garrett Cooper is going to the Padres. So the Padres made a move. They added. I mean, Garrett Cooper has been like a nice contact bat in the past, but I mean, does that move the needle a ton for the Padres this year? I don't think so.
I don't think it makes them instant favorites to win the West or potentially win a World
Series.
It's
a move.
It's a power move in terms of he's a bat.
He's a bat, and they can plug him in. I mean, yeah, you look at some of the bats that they have there now, like Matt Carpenter's sitting there on the bench. He's had a dreadful season.
And for me, the Padres, as they are right now, comes down to their pitching, because I think the offense will figure it out. I think they have the dudes in the clubhouse who can do it. But Darvish has a 4.53 ERA, Musgrove 3.05. Snell's been very good. I expect that to continue. But really, for me, I want a little bit more out of Musgrove and a lot more out of Darvish.
Yeah.
If I can get that with at least serviceable bullpen, because their bullpen is kind of under the radar. They're not atrocious, but they're not elite either. I think the offense will figure it out so long as the pitching can match.
See, the really tough thing for the Padres here is that they have the talent. They, on paper, should have a stacked roster. I mean, look at that lineup alone. Juan Soto, Tatis, Machado, Bogarts.
And look at the schedule. They're going to have a chance to do it. This month alone, they see the Dodgers, the Orioles, the Diamondbacks, the Marlins, and the Brewers, among others. They're going to have a chance to carve their way into the conversation to sneak into the postseason. It's just a matter of can they get hot at the right time, and sometimes that's all you need. last year, Philly did the same thing. They got hot at the right time, carried that wave all the way into the World Series.
Well, we got more insight on who the Mets got back for Dominic Leone. So Jeremiah Jackson, here's some insight from Joe DeMeo. He was hitting .248 with a .321 on base and a .447 slugging. That's his slash line at the Double-A affiliate with 15 home runs. Second round pick in 2018, ranked 18th in Baseball America's updated Angels Top 30. So, 18th in their system. I guess we'll take it for Leone. You get something, but I think the way you're looking at the deadline, some teams not doing much, confusing. The Yankees just didn't do much, and then you look at...
I'm surprised you didn't mention another team that... Oh!
Did you get something? What did you...
Boston has made a trade.
The Red Sox made a trade.
They're acquiring Luis Urias from the Milwaukee Brewers.
Wow. Plug him in at second base. Sure. He's been a third baseman, though, so I don't know where they're going to end up putting him.
Well, and they've had such an interchangeable infield this year, too, because they've played Justin Turner at second and at first base because they've had Devers at third base, so you're not going to move him if you don't need to. They have Yu Chang, who they just called up from AAA Worcester. Problem is he's having a bit of a slow start to his major league career with the bat. He's hitting around $160 right now.
Right.
However, he did take Max Scherzer deep a couple weeks ago. That was just to add, to that whole. Anyway,
just add to it.
Yeah, but I like them. I'm just glad that they didn't do nothing because you get rid of Kike Hernandez, which I think is the right call. I don't think he was any bit of a producer for this Red Sox offense this year. Now you deepen your infield a little bit because again they're bringing back Trevor Story, who right now, as far as we've seen, is performing pretty decently in the minors. He's going through his rehab assignment. Now all you've done with Luis Urias is you've added depth because now you have again Turner who can play first and second base. You have Christian Arroyo who's in and out whether whenever they decide to put him in the lineup. You have Yu Chang who I don't think will stick around too much longer. I do think he was more of a place filler just while Story was on his way back. And now you have Urias, who I think just adds to this infield that has done pretty well for Boston this year. I'm just surprised there's no moves with arms. I talked to you earlier about how erratic that pitching staff is.
It's just it was a weird trade deadline where the market just wasn't that big, and we're I guess approaching giving our final thoughts, but just an odd MLB trade deadline where. But what I'm just thinking, what arms would have helped the Red Sox? Erod would have been nice.
I think Erod would have been the best one.
But at the same time, what do the Red Sox have to give? What can you give up for?
Realistically, James Paxton is about it.
Are you really gonna flip James Paxton for Eduardo Rodriguez? Because James Paxton's been good.
No.
Yeah, so I think the Sox staying where they are. The Sox have a good team already, but I think this is just one of the
other thing though. But now I understand this is more hindsight because we got the justification tweet afterward. But Eduardo Rodriguez also wanted to be on the East Coast. Not that that's something Boston would have been aware of because obviously we didn't get it until the news broke. But I would have considered flipping Paxton for Erod. Erod won a World Series with Boston. If anyone, because that was one of the major things that was talked about when Kike was dealt out to Los Angeles. It wasn't even as much, oh my God, they got Kike Hernandez, the stud baseball player. It was they got Kike Hernandez, the former Dodger.
Yeah.
It takes out the factor of having to adjust to a new city, a new team, a new ballpark. So no, I think Erod would have been I think that would have been a great.
Dodgers made one more move. They get Ryan Yarbrough, reliever from the Kansas City Royals. Played on the Rays for a couple of years and had some good years.
I think that's interesting because Friedman has that Tampa connection.
The Dodgers just always there's a reason for it. They just clearly they see something in Yarbrough and
they
piece
just
of the
need
bullpen
help.
Yeah.
And I think that actually speaks to what Boston's trying to do, too. They're very much in that Tampa Bay Dodger frame of mind where they're trying to limit the amount of impact a ace starter can have. And I say that politely. I don't know how else to really describe it other than they're not looking for a guy to get you 7 innings. They're looking for a guy to get you maybe 4 2/3 and then bullpen piece it together. They did it in 2021 when they made their run to the ALCS. Chris Sale was not Chris Sale in that postseason, but it didn't make a difference because they had pitchers that could kind of get them to where they needed to be, bridge the gap to the back end of the bullpen so that you could have a Nick Pivetta come in and come up when it matters. Guys like that. I think Paxton can do that for them. I am surprised they didn't try and flip him for a pitcher that fits what they're trying to do now. Paxton is on the older side of things, so I think mentally he's in that frame of mind where, no, I'm going to pitch 5 innings, 6 innings. He's not in the, you know what, maybe I only have to go 3 2/3, keep guys off base, and then the bullpen will finish the job from there.
I just think the bullpen is their biggest question mark. I mean,
I do too.
You have a tight-knit ball game for Boston heading into the later innings, and it's oh great, here comes Joe Jakes to enter the game, and you're like, oh, this will go well, you know.
So I'm looking at my trending page on Twitter right now, and there's some interesting things here. So we have the Braves. That's not funny. So these 3 though, Cashman, Stanton, Aaron Hicks. What do you think they're talking about there? I'm sure a lot of Yankee fans they're just frustrated at the lack of movement at the deadline, just the unwillingness to improve. Everyone was saying that the Yankees, you can either buy, you can sell. Doing nothing, where does that get you?
Doesn't get you anywhere that you weren't going to go to begin with.
No.
And the Giants are in that same boat right now.
The Giants didn't. You know another team that I'm kind of surprised didn't make any real moves. The Cincinnati Reds.
Yeah.
Cincinnati Reds stayed quiet.
I know
they have young pieces and they don't want to ruin that, but at the same time,
Padres made another move.
What is this?
Right-handed reliever Scott Barlow from the Kansas City Royals.
Oh, okay. So the Royals, Scott Barlow's had some good seasons and he's got good stuff. So yeah, the Royals are just taking the machete to their bullpen right now. Barlow got traded, Chapman got traded a couple weeks ago. But I mean, that's a big impact piece for the Padres. At least I think it is.
I'm surprised Washington didn't sell more, honestly. I thought that they were going to be
but with the Nationals,
one of the teams that sold a lot more.
With the Nationals, I mean, I feel like they're not really showing improvement, but they have young guys that are playing well. So like Elaine Thomas, I don't really see the purpose of trading someone like him.
I just thought, given where they are and given where the NL East is, they would have afforded themselves more time by doing that.
They traded Candelario, so
which does count for something.
It's not nothing. So as we have 5 minutes left here, I just want to get your guys' final thoughts on this trade deadline. Kind of an uneventful trade deadline. I mean, a lot of it. I mean, we got to break some news on the air, but ultimately we kind of knew how things were going to go. The big moves were made before we came on here. Verlander was dealt, but just kind of a slow-moving deadline. And even through these 2 hours that we've been on, I still feel the winner of the deadline is the Texas Rangers. I still feel like they made the best moves.
I would agree that it's the Texas Rangers because I think, again, they padded with very reliable arms. But I think the most disappointing part of this year's trade deadline, this isn't. I mean, I know it's very first world problems, but we're not going to really see a lot of the pieces that were used in these trades really come to fruition for another 2, 3, possibly 4 years. This year was really the year of the prospect. It was really the year of the, all right, let's develop our farm system. All right, let's unload the dock. Let's sell these guys and get some younger people in replacement. And yes, in strategically, that's something that can work very well for a team and absolutely give a lot more, of a better sense of security in your roster moving forward. But in terms of just having an eventful trade deadline this year, it definitely didn't help it.
To your point about the prospects, I think it speaks to where the game is going to. Rule changes, quicker pace, bigger bases, more steals, things of that sort. The game's going younger and faster, and now more than ever, the idea of building a team in a traditional fashion where you get the big market pitcher, you get the big market slugger, like the Mets were trying to do, that's going out of vogue. It's now about, can you build up your farm system and develop homegrown talent? And there was a part of the baseball community that always knew that that was a recipe to win. The Yankees did it in the 90s. Other teams have done it in the past. The Braves in 2021 until now. But now more than ever, it feels like that's the style of building championship caliber clubs. I do think this market in particular stimulated that thought process because it wasn't a buyer's market. It was very much a seller's market.
Yeah, I mean, there weren't a lot of pieces. I mean, it's just like Bellinger wasn't available from the Cubs, so that kind of took care of that. There were early rumblings of Ohtani being available, and that would have sent this trade deadline into a frenzy, but now the Angels are going for it, so Ohtani's not on the board.
Tim Anderson, another one.
Tim Anderson, yeah, also didn't get traded. The White Sox chose to hang on to him as well as Dylan Cease. So the White Sox made moves but didn't trade a lot of their big names. And even the Cardinals, Nolan Arenado stays where he is. The Padres don't trade anybody. Juan Soto stays right where he is. So, I don't know. In terms of losers of the deadline, other than the fans, like the Yankees, I mean, that's the first team that's coming to my head. I mean, there weren't a lot of notably like bad trades this year. Like the Minnesota Twins made some bad deals a couple of years ago in the year that they got Barrios, but I haven't seen a team that really kind of just made bad trades. Just the teams that chose to do nothing, like the Yankees, just didn't do much. So, guys, we got a couple minutes left. I'd love to get your final thoughts on the deadline as a whole in 2023. Colin, I'll start with you.
My final thoughts would be the American League got a whole lot better over the course of this deadline.
Ooh.
Texas has improved. Houston has improved. The Orioles have improved. I think the American League, they might not be the superior league. I would have to really look at both sections to see who's ultimately better. But just at first glance, they got a whole hell of a lot better than they were yesterday.
Well, and with the AL West, too, that division, I mean,
Absolutely.
you could look at that as a race. Jack, do you have any parting words for us?
My two major takeaways from this year's trade deadline is that the Yankees were very disappointing. The Mets having to do, I would say just disappointment in the tri-state, because I think the Yankees were disappointing in their inactivity, and I think the Mets were disappointing in their desperate need for activity at the deadline.
Mm-hmm.
And then my only other thing is, after this deadline, I don't think I will have ever had a season where I will have watched more American League West baseball than this upcoming rest of the season.
And I'll finish this with a tweet from Max Goodman, who covers the Yankees. He says, the worst thing the Yankees could have done is stand pat. They could have traded walkier players away, getting some value back for next season and beyond. They could have upgraded to go for it with a playoff spot within reach, and all they did was acquire a rental reliever. So, wish the Yankees could have done more. The Mets did a lot. The Rangers acquired big amounts. The Angels are going for it, but I think with that, that's going to do it for us. We'll just have to wait and see how the rest of the season plays out. A huge thank you to our listeners and our callers and the people behind the glass as well. Chris Persianen, our radio producer, and Chaz McAdams, our video production guy as well. So, from Colin Loughran and Jack Warner, I'm Brian Rabacs saying so long and thank you so much to listening to this live MLB Trade Deadline special in 2023, a production of WFUV Sports.